One of the things I love about One Rental at a Time is the community is growing and we are getting lots of amazing people reach out in areas where I am weak and lack experience. One of those such people is Daniela. We are going to talk about transaction coordination. We're going to talk about creative financing. We're going to talk a little bit about Sub 2, which is a splinter, as Danielle says, inside of a toolbox of lots of other ways to do it. So I clearly butchered that quote. But Daniela, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing great. I'm so grateful for the time today, Michael. Your community has it's been really fun to get people reaching out to me and kind of asking me some questions about this stuff, but more so I've been a listener of yours for a couple years now. I'm a Bay Area gal. So, I really appreciate all of the work that you do and the content that you do produce because I listen to it frequently.
There you
So,
go. Well, thank you for that. And just so people realize, I don't consider this work, consider this fun. But that's just how broken I am. But Daniela, I think let's start with a definition.
sure.
I think something that you play is a vital role inside creative financing. I think creative financing is a collection of tools that, frankly, offer plenty of opportunities to make mistakes.
Mhm.
So I think getting kind of like, I don't know whether it's a certification or focused as a transaction coordinator is an amazing idea. It is kind of an insurance blanket. But why don't you define what a transaction coordinator is so we can start there?
Sure. So in the traditional world, brokerages have transaction coordinators on their payroll, and they're the folks that really help push once something goes under contract all the way through close of escrow. They deal with deadlines, they deal with inspection periods, they deal with, in the traditional sense, when things have to happen, that they're happening at the correct time, that the contracts are accurate, etc. In the creative world, it's a little different. The creative world, you're more of a transaction manager and you're
Mhm.
kind of, creative can be so many different things.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of our expertise comes in. We don't just know about cash transactions, we know intricacy of buying on a contract nationwide, which is a different term in every single state. We know how to deal with subject to transactions, hybrid transactions, seller finance transactions, VAs, FHAs, you name it. And I want you to like envision Barnum and Bailey and their circus. We're like the
Okay.
guy on the unicycle with like the rings and the fire and the animals around us. And like that's what we do for 30 days. And so it's our
So,
job.
so you like chaos, is what you're telling me.
This is like, it's just another day.
It's
It's just
just another thing.
it's just another day. Stuff blows up in a way that it's just like shocking to me sometimes.
Mm,
But this is real estate, as you know. Doesn't have to be traditional, doesn't have to be creative. But creative adds a sense of instability
sure.
that can't be defined in a consistent way, the way a traditional transaction can be. So it's sort of our job to be able to hold that investor and the deal they've worked so hard to find
Mm.
through the law of a pit so they can get the keys and go off into the sunset and do it, whatever they want to do.
Yeah. So let's talk about creative financing. Again, I've told Pace, he and I go back quite a ways. And I was like, I think I told him this in like 2019 or 2020. I'm like, I think it must have been 2020. I think he came down to Fresno. We met at my office and we had a conversation, him and Jameel. And I'm like, real estate investing, the 25 years I've been doing it, there's always something that like is front and center. It
Mm,
always works in every market, but every once in a while the sun shines on it and it is the thing for the time. And I told him sub two was coming. Why did I say that? Because I know that 30-year money and interest rates below three is an asset. Unlike the last time we had a real estate, collapse, the debt was the liability, right? Nobody wanted to take sub two at a variable rate loan that went to like 10%. That's crazy. So it's interesting. Where I want to go from here is sub two, like you say, is only one tool or a splinter. So put that quote out there again because I butchered it. But there's lots of other ways, land contracts and all these other things. So let's talk about all that.
yeah. So, this is the thing. I think that when you start to get involved in creative, you start to recognize how many ways there are to purchase properties as an investor. And traditional is great. Traditional is great when it works, but if you're trying to scale and you're dealing with debt to income ratio or issues, or you're dealing with, maybe your credit score is not as high as it was because you have 3 properties now and you're holding all this debt, whatever. You start to have to push the envelope and go, how do I do this? DSCRs, okay, great, 10%, that sounds great.
Yeah, yeehaw.
Terrible choice. You know what I
Right.
mean? And you start hard money, and then, well, I could do this and I could refi this, and you start to open up Pandora's box.
Mhm.
And then you start to recognize that there's this whole like envelope that gets opened that is stuff that people don't talk about on the everyday marketplace. Subject to, right? We talk about assuming mortgages. We don't talk about buying properties subject to the existing mortgage. We don't talk about buying properties in a land trust, or buying on a contract for deed, or an executory contract, or a land contract. Like, we're not teaching high schoolers or college students, like, you don't have to purchase this way, and that's because there's this amazing industry that exists of professionals that are meant to, we're meant to, this is supposed to be the one thing we buy, the biggest purchase of our life, and that's it, and it's kaput and it's over. When really you can own multiple properties nationwide. Like, this is a reality,
Okay.
and you
Yeah.
can buy them in many different ways. So sub two, or buying a mortgage, buying a home subject to the existing mortgage, is like one of your socket wrenches,
Mm.
and there are multiple ways to hold on to that tiny interest rate,
Mhm.
and conduct business alongside sellers, get them out of a situation that they just want to walk, just want to be done,
Right.
they just want
They're
to walk.
done. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you can kind of come in and decide what is the best exit strategy for that property as an investment. What makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, when you think about creative financing, what I think a lot, I think a lot of, so let's say it this way. I think a lot of people get attracted to creative financing, frankly, because they don't have any money, right? Over
Yes.
the 20 years of doing real estate investing, there's always something that comes along that says, hey, I can build a portfolio, 7-figure portfolio with none of my own money.
Mhm.
Sub two is today's thing that does that. And again, as Pace clearly shows almost every day, certainly every week on his Instagram, probably YouTube as well, he's doing it, right?
Mhm.
I think he just closed another one the other day. But Pace isn't everyone.
Thank you. That's like my tagline. When
Yeah,
people call me, we're not Pace.
yeah, no, yeah. It's just yeah. One of the things that what I think a lot of people misunderstand about Pace is he's invested in his community for, I don't know, let's call it a decade. It's probably more.
Hmm.
And now the fruits of some of that decade is his amazing deal flow, right? When you see Pace inking something, he's probably saying no to 100 things,
Yes.
right? Let's
Yes.
be clear. He doesn't. That's what that's the missing thing that I wish Pace would highlight here soon is how many times he says no, because it always seems like he says yes, and I know that's just not true. It just can't be true. There's
No.
lots of deals that don't make sense to do sub two. Sub two is not the answer to everything. Sub two does not cure cancer, right?
Right.
It solves a unique problem in a unique set for a seller. It's amazing,
Hmm.
but it's not the only thing. Is that fair?
That's more than fair. My favorite investor that calls me is the investor that's ready to accelerate the loan tomorrow.
Mm,
Tomorrow. Are you prepared to accelerate the loan? That tells me you have money. That tells me you have credit. That tells me you're ready to play in the big boy pool and and do real estate responsibly. The folks that come to me that don't even have money to pay my minuscule fee, it's like, we're not talking today. Like, you're not ready for this.
yeah.
And I've actually worked probably 4 transactions now, 4 PACE wholesalers that I've worked with that have assigned properties to PACE and his team. And the underwriting process is rigorous. Pace's chief operating officer is really sort of my mentor, Molly Tennant. And she's the horse I bet on, because she's the horse that fixes
Shout
all.
out Molly. I haven't met her yet. one day.
This woman is incredible. I mean, talk about like master problem solver, but also master realist. Pace is a
Mm,
visionary. It's his job to dream. It's her job to execute. So
mm,
when you're talking to her, she's going, that's completely unreasonable. That's never going to work. That doesn't cash flow. You're
mm.
sending me this deal right now. It doesn't cash flow. Get this off my
Yeah,
desk. And so those
I
are
love this. I wish so. Again, this is important. I real estate investing is never easy.
no.
What drives me nuts, and you've heard me call it out many times on the daily financial news, is the people that sell easy, it's dishonest,
It's really
right?
hard.
Right. So let's talk about Molly. And again, this is just your guess. It's not, a statistic we could back up, but it's your educated opinion. What percent of deal flow gets past Molly and ultimately gets signed? I have a number in mind, which I won't change, but I'm going to see what you come up with first.
She may disagree with me, but I really want to say it's something like 10%. And
Oh, that's my number. It was like less than 10%. It
but
has
it's
to be.
because there's mechanisms that you don't just get to Molly, right?
Ah, there's even
Like
filters before Molly.
there's mechanisms. And like I will say that, you know, in Pace's mentorship, it's really less about sub two and way more about wealth building. So he's trying to put mechanisms in there
Oh
where
yeah.
it's like, take this underwriting course, learn how to underwrite, take this comping thing. It's like, guys, don't sit there making obvious mistakes, wasting obvious money that might not even be yours. Because
Yeah,
you think
exactly.
to yourself, you could do this and borrow someone else's hard earned cash that you'll never be able to pay back. You
Yeah,
know, it's
I
a
love
really
this.
slippery slope. I mean, there's so many influencers right now, real estate influencers, that are talking about how to do real estate with no money. And it's deeply
Yeah,
frustrating to me because I'm on the end where you bring me the car and I get to look under the hood and I go, this structure, this
yeah.
seller, this
There's
buyer,
no engine. There's
this
no tires.
market. Like, what are we doing here? What are we really trying to accomplish here? And it's sort of, it's awkward for the folks I'm working with, but I feel like it's my duty to go, you hired me and I have to tell you here if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it smells like a 3-day-old fish. Like we have to be reasonable here.
Yeah, you know what? And again, the other thing that I want to talk about here is there's two parties involved in every real estate transaction, whether you go from a crash transaction or to a creative transaction.
Mm.
And my fear is there's a lot of newbies, with no money, that find a motivated seller. Because when you're reaching out, it doesn't take a lot to find. Unfortunately, my fear is a lot of motivated sellers, I'm sorry, new investors sing a song to this would-be seller that's unreasonable. And they get excited because they inked their first contract and they can't deliver. I mean, I have had many of back in the day wholesalers that quoted a price that's freaking ARV. I mean, how the hell can I make money when you're buying it at ARV? I mean, come on, guys. But I mean, I had one, oh, this was so terrible.
Oh
One
boy.
wholesaler, one wholesaler inked the property up for ARV, kept extending. The lady packed up her house,
Oh no.
and then the wholesaler ghosted her. I mean,
Mm.
come on. You're, oh, there are some rotten people in this business.
And it's a people business, which is the hardest
Yes.
part about it. The hardest part about it. When you and I see this all the time in these communities where it's like no cash down, you can make a fortune, right? It's like these folks, they start making these calls, they find a couple motivated sellers, they find a couple PMLs, these poor people that are willing to lend to them. And
PML is private money lender.
yes, exactly. And they get going and they feel this adrenaline and this momentum. And then you're going, how can this possibly continue until it doesn't? And I get transactions oftentimes that are the sellers calling, going, they stopped paying my mortgage.
Yeah.
What can I do? Or people that have just been left to the wind. And, it doesn't matter how you're investing. when you're dealing with people and their lives, this is why, and I don't mean to speak condescendingly or facetiously about it, but if you don't have money, you don't play on the Monopoly board. I'm sorry.
No, exactly.
You
Yeah.
do not pass go. It's just that simple. And there's all of this misconception around having a W-2 and that it's this horrible thing. When really, like, that is the superpower.
No, I
That
agree.
is the superpower. And I think it's just people watching others. We're in this age of just watching other people's lives that aren't real. The Hormozis are like the freaking 0.0001% of the people that are telling you this sucks. I hate this, but I'm here doing it,
Yeah.
and it's hard for folks. They just the grass is always greener, Michael.
No, how many times have we heard easy and build? I could build a port like this is so frustrating. Just this morning on the daily financial news, Airbnb arbitrage
Oh God.
came in. Crazy. So again, there's somebody who sold Airbnb arbitrage is easy. Minimum investment was 20 grand. And now they're being hauled in front of the SEC and all these other things. Folks, it's never easy.
No.
Stop it. If you don't have any money, go get some money. I mean, go get a job or stop spending on stupid stuff.
When you start in real estate, people always go, "Oh God, I can't find a deal. I've been looking for a deal for over a year. All these, I'm dealing with crappy wholesalers, or my agent, it's everyone else's problem." And then it
Right.
goes, the money. I can't find private money, whatever it is. But nobody talks about when my job ends and you get the keys, that's the hardest part. The hardest part's the hold. The hardest part's
Yeah.
the pain. The hardest part's that, oh, this midterm rental, you comped it, you underwrote it. Guess what? It's a 50% vacancy, honey, and you're paying 5 grand out of pocket 6 months out of the year. Did you plan for that?
Yeah.
Like and that's actually my situation. That's a story. That's my story. That's a situation I'm in right now. Beautiful property I bought subject to in Bend, Oregon. I'm in Pacifica. I'm on the coast. So for
Yep.
me, this is like a satellite little snow town for me. It's
Mhm.
it's
Yep.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Pacific
I've been there.
Northwest appreciation, great market, and that midterm rental, 50% vacancy,
Eesh.
and it's like, I thankfully am dealing with that. But many people that are not in my position simply
Mhm.
can't. You can't grow money on a tree to pay
Yeah.
these mortgages.
Right.
And, it's one of those things where, okay, I'm pivoting and I'm going, I want this thing off my books. This was not a smart choice. And
Right.
now I'm going, do I really want to buy another subject to property because of the lack of control that I have when things don't go right? So I'm learning that's why I became a transaction coordinator because I wanted to mitigate my own risk as an investor. I'm super conservative and I was saying no to deals that cash flowed. And I was like, okay, come on. Like you got to try here. And
Yeah.
this has really allowed me to learn multiple deal structures. I'd buy in a contract any day. I'd buy seller finance any day. Now I would be really hard pressed to find the right opportunity for me to buy subject to, but that's
Mhm.
because I transact subject to every day. And
Right.
I see, I see how far the pendulum swings and how advantageous it could be for the investor that can expect it's ready. They're ready for this. They're just trying to, it's almost like they're just playing Russian roulette and
Yeah.
hoping they can get away with this until this or until that. You know how it is. They're ready to 1031. They're ready to
Mhm.
do, they're sophisticated buyers,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So let's highlight when should somebody come to you as a transaction coordinator? At what point, right? Then they have that first phone call, that area of interest. Because what I fear is sub two is so hot right now. Pace does an amazing job of getting people excited. Probably more people than he knows just hear the word and equate it with him. But it's only one tool. I think you called it a socket wrench earlier. There's all these other tools, right? So when should somebody come to a transaction coordinator? When should they hire someone like you?
Well, if you're not aware of all the ways to purchase, I think a call to go, hey, can you just talk to me about, how do I transact in Tennessee? Like what can be done in Tennessee? Or what about, what about New York? Or what about California? Like how should I be talking to these sellers? Because I'm getting these objections and I could go, well, you're getting this objection because what they really want is to remain on the warranty deed. They don't want to transfer it. But that's not so bad. Right. So kind of talking about advantages and disadvantages, but where our skill set really comes in is when you have your purchase contract signed and you're ready to open escrow, because I've got relationships, and many of us do. There are a lot of really great transaction coordinators out there that have relationships with title and escrow companies nationwide, people we can call and go, what do you think about this? Can we do this? Are how would this work here? And open escrow and start the juggling act. Like get on the unicycle, light up the rings, like the whole thing, right? And educate these folks the way through because there's different hurdles that come up. There's different nuances that occur, different points for renegotiation, different points where you could second or double, cross. Do I really want to do this? I still can get out. I can still get my earnest money deposit back. So, but even just consultation. I mean, it's worth it just to know if your goal is really to scale your portfolio in a specific market, how can I purchase in this market? What are my sales tactics? And I think that's something that is often really underlooked.
Yeah, when I think about this whole creative space and I've bought creativity, seller financing and all of that, it is a people business. I love that you brought that up earlier. But I really want to go. Let me make sure this is true. Yeah, I've never bought directly from a seller
Mhm.
who was like days away from foreclosure, right? Like where they're all where what always fears me is they get to a point where they'll say yes to almost anything,
I know.
right? Relieve the stress. And then they're dealing with a newbie on the other side who just F's them because they can't close or it's like it's just that it's very disappointing that happens. Um, how do we? I just want people less. I want less people to hurt people that are already in pain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
What are some warning signs? It's like don't do that. What are some?
Okay. Well, when people come to me and they're like, they're going to auction tomorrow, like I can't get involved in this. This is just a hard no. I think that when you are looking to purchase from folks like this, you know, and you're doing it creatively, one of the first things I ask for is what is the most recent, I need to see the most recent mortgage statement because that tells the story of where they're really at and how you can really help them and how quickly. Oftentimes sellers aren't telling the truth about the situation they're really in. Maybe that title report comes back, and guess what? There's a down payment assistance, a HELOC, a couple utility liens, and the deal blows up because of that, right? So it's really about figuring out how they need to be helped immediately. Like, what is the pain? Is the pain like where does this is it you really need to just stop paying your mortgage tomorrow? You can't pay your phone bill, your phone's about to shut off. Is it like the house is in disrepair so badly that like you can't put it on the market? Like where does this pain lie? Because that's where an investor can decide if they can responsibly help. And you're always going to deal with those irresponsible newbies, like
Yeah.
always. And I think for me as a transaction coordinator, when they bring me this stuff, it's really about assessing, is this a viable transaction from the start? Because once we open escrow and get people's hopes up, things happen. And, I
Yeah,
always
so
talk
let me ask that question. So
about.
you get a lot of deal flow sent to you. What percent of those are just hard no's? Like this is not a deal. This can't be done. I don't know if you lied or they're wrong or whatever, but it's just not a thing. It's got to be more than zero.
I would say it's probably about 15%. In those
Okay.
transactions, I just don't. I'm like, I can't, I'm so sorry, I can't help you with this. And it's more about like, this also comes down to your moral compass.
Right.
There's plenty of TCs out there that are like, cool, turn and burn, turn and burn, turn. It's
Mm,
business, right?
right.
Like it's business and they're there and they're trying to make their money. And I'm very lucky because I owned a business previous to this and I
Mhm.
I built client relationships previous to this and I went through that pain. of doing things for clients that I would never do again. And, the
Yeah,
struggle of just,
it's
oh
just
my
not
God,
worth
I
it.
would do
Yeah.
anything for more business. And now I'm going, I would not do anything for more business. I am not in that position. And I want to do this. If I'm going to do this, I have to do this right. And so I'm working with a smaller group of clients, actually. I'm working with quality folks over quantity folks. And it's
Mhm.
hard because turning business away is hard. Folks that refuse to give the sellers promissory notes and deeds of trusts, folks that refuse to tell them they're even going to wholesale the property. I mean, it's
Oh,
stuff like this where I'm just like, I'm not the
yeah.
right
I'm not your right girl. I'm out.
yeah, and that's also something that I have to accept, not just about creative finance, but I know to be true in business in general. There's folks that will pay the prevailing wage, and there's folks that will just straight up lie. There's folks that will fortify or forge report. It's like
Yeah.
just what it is.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. There's a lot of people that follow the channel like yourself for several years that may be looking for creative, or maybe they stumble across an opportunity.
Yeah.
Who should reach out to you, right? Who in my universe should reach out to
I think, I really appreciate being able to educate folks on what they can do responsibly. So if you're thinking about doing a creative transaction in a specific market, reach out to me, ask me questions, and at least I can give you options because it might not always look like this. You
you?
might be able to approach a seller with three other buying tactics that are such a more better fit for you, for them, for everybody. And, if you do get a creative transaction and you're like, I don't know what the heck to do with this potato, I'm your girl. I can bake it for you. We can put it on a plate and you can go off and feast after it's
Mm,
done. Um, I have a lot of really wonderful relationships because this is a people business and because I've tried to take care of as many people as I can.
there you
So, it's really about how do we grow as real estate investors responsibly, ethically, and how do we do things that maybe we've been told we can't, right? Like you'll never be able to own four properties. So you'll never, well, turns out you can, but you just have to be ready. And, I can help prepare you for that.
So now we know who should reach out. How should they reach out?
So, I am partners with a couple gals, and we have formed a collective. It's called the TC Collective. You can find us at the tc-collective.com, or you can reach out to me directly on my Instagram account, which is at the Daniela Divine, and that's Devine.
There you go. One more time, what's your IG page?
The Daniela Divine, Devine.
Awesome. Give her a follow, send her a note. Thank you for doing it responsibly. Thank you for telling us it's people business. Thank you for highlighting if you don't have any money, go get some money. I mean, that's just drives me crazy. Daniela, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.